Welcome to Astrid Insight Lab. We began in a well-known survival camp. In her heading out announcement, Laurie instructed Carl to stay close to Dale. Dale commanded, "If you see anything, holler. I'll run after you." Laurie decided to look for supplies in the neighboring woods. There was rustling noise. Nothing. She went on. There is more rustling. Again, nothing. As Laurie prepared to panic, she was dragged to the ground when Shane suddenly materialized. They quickly started taking their clothing off. When Shane noticed Laurie's jewelry, he briefly stopped. They resumed their passionate, in-the-grass infatuation once she took it off. Sheriff Rick, Laurie's husband, was still imprisoned in a tank in the heart of Atlanta at the time. The military vehicle was swarmed by zombies, but they were unable to enter. A voice was heard inside from the radio. The voice questioned, "Hey, are you still alive in there?" The speaker then encouraged Rick to flee, pointing out that a side street was comparatively uninhabited by walkers. Rick emerged from the top of the tank after taking a few slow, deep breaths. He shot a few zombies, hit one in the face with a rock, then fled. Rick was abruptly diverted down an alley by a young man, who Rick nearly shot. The man who spoke on the radio identified himself as Glenn as the two ascended a fire escape. After ascending to the roof, they circled the building to reach the street. Rick and Glenn managed to reach a retail shop where a group of survivors were waiting, despite zombies closing in on them. Andre, one of the survivors, was enraged with Rick for pulling the trigger on his gun and calling in the dead. "You just rang the dinner bell," she remarked. Indeed, a swarm of zombies had gathered around the store's door. The gang heard bullets all of a sudden. They ran up to the roof, where they discovered Dixon aiming his rifle. Black T-Dog charged Dixon with wasting ammunition. The two started fighting as soon as Dixon spoke the N-word, as if he were just waiting for an opening. At the conclusion, Dixon pointed a rifle at T-Dog and proclaimed his superiority. The racist asked, "Anybody else?" Rick gave a positive response before shooting Dixon in the face. Rick then tied Dixon up with a pipe before throwing the keys from the roof. Dixon roared in fury. Rick then advised that they go to the sewers. The structure need to have a basement access point, according to survivor Jackie, who had worked in the local zoning office. Glenn offered to go into the hole to assess the issue, and he brought fellow survivor Morales and a flashlight with him. While Dixon sought to get anyone on the radio, T-Dog and Dixon insulted each other on the roof. Dixon affirmed, "It's nothing personal. My kind and your kind were just never meant to mix." T-Dog shook his head and turned down Dixon's offer of a hacksaw. After quickly returning from their sewer excursion, Glenn and Morales revealed that a steel grate prevented any possibility of leaving through the sewer. Even worse, the first set of glass doors had been broken through by the zombies outside. They were only prevented from entering the department store by one final set of doors. Then what? Rick proposed a diversion. The living could smell the undead, according to Andrea. They had a distinct smell. The strategy was to dismember a dead security guard and cover the other people with his blood and intestines, smelling like a zombie as a result. The survivors used a huge axe and rubber gloves to finish the job, which was as revolting as it sounds. Glenn passed out. "Do we have their odor?" Rick queried. Andrea said, grimacing, "Oh yeah." After giving T-Dog the key to Dixon's cuffs, which he had kept in his pocket as an extra set, Rick and Glenn went outside. Amazingly, the two looked like they belonged and passed by undead people who gave them a quick sniff before moving on. From the roof, the other survivors looked on. Sadly, storm clouds were building overhead. It was going to rain, which might wash Rick and Glenn clean. T-Dog, meanwhile, persisted in making radio calls to people. Shane's group of survivors could barely hear the calls, though he wasn't aware of it. Laurie remarked, "He said a department store." It found out that Amy, who was traveling with Shane, Laurie, Carl, Dale, and others, was Amy's big sister. Andrea offered to travel to Atlanta and seek assistance. Shane now assured Amy that her sister knew the risks and that they would not pursue her. Amy was obviously enraged. "You son of a bitch," Shane was told by Amy, and he appeared really guilty. In the meantime, Rick and Glenn carried on moving through the swarm of zombies. Then the rain started. The two started to wash the guts away. The zombies started to notice a stench. Oh. Rick buried his axe in the zombie's brain when it attacked him with a zombie. Rick cried, "Run!" They eventually succeeded in doing so by jumping a chain link fence. Rick and Glenn hurried to a truck at a building site as the zombies discovered out how to scale the fence. The keys were still inside. The engine was gunned and they took off. However, they didn't travel very far. Rick quickly stopped the truck and entered a passing sports vehicle, activating the obnoxious alarm. The plan: Glenn would arrive at the department store's entrance in the sports automobile. The undead would be drawn to the alarm. Rick would move the vehicle to the back of the shop in the interim and collect the survivors. To give the gang the information, Glenn called them on the radio. "What about racist Dixon though? You can't just leave me here." Dixon cried out. After some hesitation, T-Dog decided to use the key to release Dixon. Unfortunately, T-Dog tripped and the key flew out of his grasp and into an unlocked pipe. A furious T-Dog said, "I'm sorry," before sprinting off the roof. Dixon roared in rage once more. Cut to Glenn, who sped past a crowd of pedestrians in front of the department store, while his car alarm blared. Rick is shown backing up to a loading dock. T-Dog, Andrea, Morales, and Jacques climbed into the truck's bed. Rick observed that Dixon was absent. "I dropped the damn key," T-Dog said. Finally, cut to Glenn as he accelerates his sports car down a deserted highway. He shouted with delight. Guys, that was Astrid Insight Labs' second episode, Season 1 of The Walking Dead. Please keep in mind to like and subscribe in order to receive updates whenever we publish new episodes of The Walking Dead. This video was made possible by Pictory. Sign up and use the promo code P1T6U to get a special discount. Find the link in the video description.